next to Lin Xingyi. Lin Xingyi raised her head, complex emotions flashing in her clear big eyes. She pursed her lips, as if she was hesitating whether to speak her mind. Chen Yang stretched out his hand and compared with Lin Xingyi in the air. Her hands looked small and soft, like a docile kitten. "Tell me, okay?" Chen Yang said softly, his eyes full of concern. Lin Xingyi took a deep breath and finally spoke. I'm a little angry." Her voice was soft although she was angry. It carried a hint of grievance. "Angry? Why?" Chen Yang said gently, encouraging her to continue. Lin Xingyi's brows furrowed even more tightly, and her rosy little mouth pouted slightly, like an angry little rabbit. That's the one who got you hurt. He got away with it." At this point, her voice suddenly rose a little, and a spark of anger flashed in her eyes. Chen Yang felt warm in his heart. It turned out that she was standing up for him. He couldn't help but reach out and gently stroke Lin Xingyi's hair that was scattered on her back, and said softly, "Don't be angry with this kind of person." Lin Xingyi looked up at Chen Yang, her eyes full of worry and heartache. But, her eyes fell on Chen Yang's arm, and her voice trembled slightly. Chen Yang smiled and patted Lin Xingyi on the back gently. "It's okay, I'm much better now. Besides, that guy wanted to chat with you, and ignoring him was the best punishment for him." After hearing this, Lin Xingyi's face suddenly blushed, and she remembered Chen Yang's words, "I am her boyfriend." Knowing that Chen Yang was coming tonight, Lin Xingyi secretly hid the sketchbook when Chen Yang was away in the afternoon, for fear that Chen Yang would see it. She lowered her head and muttered softly, "How do you know?" Seeing her like this again, Chen Yang laughed out loud. Lin Xingyi was also infected by his laughter, and the corners of her mouth rose slightly. But soon, she remembered the person who hurt Chen Yang, and her expression darkened again. But I still feel angry," Lin Xingyi whispered, her small hands tightly grasping the hem of her pajamas. Chen Yang looked at Lin Xingyi's conflicted expression and thought that he had to teach her some ways to relieve her emotions. Chapter 36. Write down your anger. Sometimes even if you figure it out, the bad mood still remains. "I have an idea," Chen Yang said. "If you are really angry, you can write down the words you want to curse at him first." Lin Xingyi raised her head, a hint of curiosity flashing in her eyes. "Write it down?" Chen Yang nodded and continued. "Yes. Write down everything you want to say, then read it again tomorrow morning, and see if you are still angry." Lin Xingyi nodded thoughtfully, then stood up and walked to the desk. She took out a piece of paper and a pen, wrote a few words and then stopped. She looked back at Chen Yang with a hint of confusion and shyness in her eyes. "That Chen Yang," Lin Xingyi whispered, her cheeks slightly red. I'm not very good at swearing." Chen Yang was stunned for a moment, then couldn't help laughing. He walked to Lin Xingyi and gently rubbed her hair. "It's okay, I'll teach you." Still hesitating whether to teach those who curse too harshly, Chen Yang scratched his head and said a little embarrassed, "Lie. Boys occasionally joke and curse with each other, but it may be a bit too vulgar for you." Lin Xingyi suddenly became interested. She pulled Chen Yang's clothes, and said in a soft voice as if she was acting coquettish, "Lie. It's okay, just teach me, I want to learn." This is simply impossible to refuse, even though the swearing method is a bit too weird. Looking at Lin Xingyi's expectant eyes, Chen Yang smiled helplessly. "Okay, but let's put it mildly. But what if I don't want to write his name? It feels a bit disgusting when I write it." "Then you can use the word birth instead." Chen Yang thought about his wording, leaned down, and whispered a few words in Lin Xingyi's ear. As Lin Xingyi listened, surprise appeared in her beautiful eyes, and she finally couldn't help but cover her mouth. "Can you really write like this?" Lin Xingyi asked in a low voice, with a hint of excitement and nervousness in her voice. Chen Yang felt more and more guilty, nodded and said, "Of course, this is your personal note, write whatever you want. As long as Xingyi doesn't use these words to curse others, there shouldn't be any problem." Chen Yang comforted himself. Encouraged by Chen Yang, Lin Xingyi began to write quickly. Her expression turned serious, her tiny nose wrinkled slightly. Her lips gently pursed, looking both cute and a little funny. Chen Yang stood aside and watched Lin Xingyi write. Even the swear words were written so beautifully. As she was writing, Lin Xingyi stopped writing and looked up at Chen Yang with some expectation in her eyes. "I finished writing it, is there anything better?" Chen Yang was amused by Lin Xingyi's curious expression. Her curiosity was actually used in such a strange way. After thinking for a while, he leaned over and said a few more words in Lin Xingyi's ear. After listening to this, Lin Xingyi's eyes sparkled with excitement. It seemed that cheese had grown again. She quickly wrote down what Chen Yang had taught her on the paper, and then continued to look up at Chen Yang. Chen Yang didn't expect that the first time he taught as a teacher would be this kind of thing. In this way, one taught the other, and low laughter could be heard from the room from time to time. Lin Xingyi's paper was soon filled with all kinds of insults to Chu Shen. Some were taught by Chen Yang, and some were her own thoughts. Chen Yang quietly looked at Lin Xingyi's back, her long hair swayed gently as she wrote. And her figure under her pajamas was faintly visible. Even when she was angry, she was so beautiful. Finally, Lin Xingyi put down her pen and breathed a sigh of relief. She turned back to look at Chen Yang with a smug smile on her face. I finished writing. Chen Yang leaned over to take a look and couldn't help laughing out loud. Although Lin Xingyi tried to use euphemistic words in the idea she came up with, the content was unexpectedly creative, and some of them even made Chen Yang feel ashamed. He patted Lin Xingyi's shoulder gently and said softly, "Okay, now that I've finished writing it, I'll read it again tomorrow morning to see if I'm still angry." Lin Xingyi nodded, folded the paper carefully and put it in the drawer. She turned around, the expression on her face much softer than it was at the beginning. "Feeling better?" Chen Yang asked softly. "Well, much better. Thank you, Chen Yang." Her voice was soft, with a hint of tiredness. Being teased by Chen Yang during the day requires my body to react, which must be quite exhausting. Chen Yang said softly. "You're welcome. You won't be angry tomorrow when you wake up. Now, go to bed." The two of them followed the principle of each person taking half of the bed, leaving a small distance in between. But I don't know if anyone will cross the line at night. Even so, they could feel each other's warmth and heartbeat. "Good night, Xingyi," Chen Yang said softly. "Good night." Lin Xingyi responded in a weak voice. She must be very sleepy. The room gradually became quiet, with only the sound of the two people's steady breathing. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting a soft halo on the ground. Chen Yang was quite energetic. He turned sideways and looked at the girl who was sleeping beside him. "Oh no, maybe you haven't taken the medicine yet." Her sleeping face was peaceful and beautiful. Her long eyelashes cast a faint shadow in the moonlight. Chen Yang couldn't help but reach out and gently brush away a strand of hair in front of her forehead. Forget it, he seems to be in a good mood, Chen Yang thought. There was no point in waking him up and going back to sleep. This medicine is originally used to calm and relieve negative emotions. Since you are in a good mood, it should be okay to skip taking it once. As if feeling Chen Yang's touch, Lin Xingyi frowned slightly in her sleep. And then relaxed. The corners of her mouth were slightly raised, as if she was having a sweet dream. It was just daybreak and the sparrows, and several other birds outside the window had already started chirping. Chen Yang slowly opened his eyes and regained consciousness. He felt something strange about his right arm, as if it was disconnected from his brain. Lin Xingyi was sleeping soundly on his right arm, her beautiful eyes closed, her long eyelashes trembling slightly in the morning light, like butterfly wings. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, as if he was having a sweet dream. The soft long hair scattered on Chen Yang's arms, bringing an itchy touch. Chen Yang's right arm was numb, but he didn't dare to move at all, for fear of waking up the sleeping girl. "Forget it, it's numb and I can't feel anything, so just leave it like this." He breathed lightly and quietly admired Lin Xingyi's sleeping face. "Just feast your eyes and consider it as the reward for being a pillow." The morning light shone through the gaps in the curtains onto Lin Xingyi's face, adding a soft glow to her already fair skin. Lin Xingyi's nose suddenly wrinkled, and she gently rubbed Chen Yang's arm, making a slight grunt. Chen Yang was mesmerized by the sight, because it was so adorable. This injury was totally worth it, except that his right arm suffered as it was injured and used as a pillow. Just like that, Chen Yang lay motionless for nearly half an hour, enjoying the tranquility of the early morning in both pain and joy. A little after 8 o'clock, Lin Xingyi's eyelashes began to tremble slightly, like a butterfly about to spread its wings. She slowly opened her eyes and blinked a few times, dazed lie, seeming not to be fully awake yet. Chapter 37. Post a self-deprecating post. "Good morning, lazy bum," Chen Yang said softly, with a little laziness and hoarseness that was not obvious when he just woke up. Lin Xingyi was stunned for a moment, then realized her sleeping position and quickly sat up, but she moved too quickly and felt a little dizzy. "Oops." Lin Xingyi cried out softly, and her body swayed when she sat up suddenly. Chen Yang immediately reached out to support her. "Are you okay?" Lin Xingyi shook her head, with a hint of sleepiness in her eyes. She rubbed her eyes and yawned. Pajamas are loose to begin with, and when Lin Xingyi stretches, the hazy view becomes even richer. Chen Yang couldn't control his eyes for a moment and couldn't help but look a few more times. There is really a high peak with 6 dragons circling the sun above, and a river flowing back against the waves below. Chen Yang secretly admired in his heart. This action of getting up seemed particularly cute in Chen Yang's eyes. "I'm sorry, I don't know why," Lin Xingyi said in a low voice, with a hint of shyness in her voice. "Is your hand okay?" Lin Xingyi remembered something and looked at Chen Yang's right arm with concern. "I'm much better now, thanks to the nutritious food you fed me." After Chen Yang finished speaking, he slurped twice, indicating that he was savoring the taste. Then he asked softly, "Xingyi, do you remember the paper you wrote last night?" When it comes to serious matters, he no longer smiles. Go and take it out and have a look. Lin Xingyi nodded, turned and walked to the desk, opened the drawer, and took out the neatly folded paper. His fingers trembled slightly, and he seemed a little nervous. He slowly unfolded the paper, his brows slightly furrowed. But the corners of his now, Lin consciously rose, forming an interesting expression. Chen Yang walked behind Lin Xingyi, his fingers couldn't stop. And he curled the hair around her ears. How is it? Do you remember what you wrote? Lin Xingyi's eyes swept across the paper. She covered her mouth, chuckled, and her charming eyes curved into crescent shapes. What's wrong? Chen Yang asked in a puzzled tone. But in fact he had already guessed about 70 of it. Lin Xingyi pointed at a line of words on the paper, her voice trembling with laughter. Look, I actually wrote curse you have fewer hairs than you have conscience. It feels so childish. Lin Xingyi chose a relatively civilized sentence she had written and said it out loud. Some of the words Chen Yang taught her were too dirty for her to read. Chen Yang gently pinched Lin Xingyi's tendery lobe. And his hand was pushed away. Itch. Are you still angry now? Chen Yang asked softly. Lin Xingyi shook her head. I'm not angry anymore, she said in a soft but firm voice. Chen Yang breathed a sigh of relief. It was relatively easy to resolve such a small emotional matter. And then pointed to the trash can. So you know what to do, right? Lin Xingyi nodded in understanding. She took a deep breath, held the paper with both hands and made a gesture to tear it. Wait, she said, I want to see it again. Chen Yang did not stop her. He watched Lin Xingyi lower her head to read the paper again and noticed that her expression became softer and softer. Actually, Lin Xingyi said softly, looking back at these words now, I feel more moved. Chen Yang was a little surprised, and wondered if his condition had worsened. How could he look moved when he was just swearing? Move? Lin Xingyi nodded, yeah, because it reminds me of how you stood up for me. Besides, when you were writing these words with me last night, I wasn't so angry anymore. Being stared at by such a pair of beautiful eyes, Chen Yang felt a little hot due to the true feelings shown by the girl in front of him. And his usual rogue spirit was gone. As she spoke, Lin Xingyi slowly tore the paper into pieces. The scraps of paper fell into the trash can like snowflakes, taking away the last trace of resentment. Watching the pieces of paper fall into the trash can, Lin Xingyi breathed a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Okay, wash up quickly, Chen Yang said softly, let's go have breakfast. After a simple breakfast, Chen Yang went back to the dormitory. He felt too guilty pretending to be injured, and letting Xingyi take care of him for the whole day. Having this kind of thought proves that I am a person of high moral standards. On the way back to the dormitory, Chen Yang affirmed himself. Chen Yang turned and walked into the dormitory building, still with a gentle smile on his face, but his eyes gradually became deeper. After enjoying yourself, you need to deal with things that need to be dealt with. The moment he opened the dormitory door, Chen Yang felt three burning gazes. Liu Daonji, Fu Qin and Ji Bakyu sat together with gossipy expressions on their faces that could not be concealed. Hey, Lao Chen is back, Liu Daonji shouted exaggerated. You didn't even go back to the dormitory. Tell me, how was the hero saving the beauty drama? Fu Qin pushed his glasses and asked seriously. Are you okay? Do you need us to take another look at you? Ji Bakyu jumped directly to the point. Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me, did you get the girl? Chen Yang shook his head helplessly and walked to his seat and sat down. Don't make blind guesses, Lin. Xingyi and I are just ordinary friends. Come on, Yu Daonji curled his lips. How can ordinary friends stay out all night in the dormitory? My mother was worried about me and asked me to stay back for one night. Real? Real. Chen Yang's home is indeed in Linzhong City. The three of them felt that this statement was 60 or even 50 credible. Chen Yang did not explain more no matter what he said. These gossipy roommates would automatically make up their own stories. Oh, by the way, Chen Yang suddenly remembered something and turned to Fu Qin. Can you do me a favor? What help? Fu Qin asked warily. Chen Yang's eyes became deep. Use your account to help me post a post about me on the campus forum. About your post? Fu Qin was confused. What? The school idol selection? Chen Yang said lightly. Just write that I have a girlfriend in another school, and that I dated several people in high school, and that I have cheated on my girlfriend, etc. But the content must be difficult to disprove. The dormitory fell silent in an instant, and the three roommates looked at each other, unable to believe that these words came out of his mouth. Fu Qin frowned. What the hell are you doing? Aren't you just discrediting yourself? Chen Yang smiled. It's okay, reputation is not important. It may be useful in the future. Ji Bakyu and Yu Daonji exchanged confused looks, obviously not understanding Chen Yang's intention. Chen Yang continued. Lil Jibo, mobilize your connections and help me investigate the emotional history of that Chusheng within the scope permitted by law. Daonji, you know a lot of people in the gym. Ask Chusheng if he has any romantic affairs. Liu Dayanji scratched his head. What are you doing? Revenge? Chen Yang shook his head. Not really, just prepare for a rainy day. The dormitory fell silent again. The three roommates felt that Chen Yang was more serious than usual, and they realized that he was not joking. Fukin sighed. Okay, I'll post that for you, but don't do anything out of the ordinary. Chen Yang nodded. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Zhai Bakyu also agree. Okay, I'll help you find out. After Chen Yang left, Lin Xingyi sat at the desk in a rental house not far from the school, holding a pen in her hand, but she did not start writing. Her thoughts drifted to everything that happened yesterday. Chen Yang stood up for her, accompanied him to the infirmary, and fed him. Lin Xingyi sighed softly and murmured to herself. Chen Yang, what do you think of me? Chen Yang's dormitory had no classes in the afternoon, so the four of them had a great time playing games together. By the way, Ji Bakyu suddenly spoke up, breaking the silence. When can I give you the information you want? Chen Yang came back to his senses from his thoughts. It's okay, don't be too anxious, it's more important to do it covertly. Yu Dayanji also came over. What about what I went to the gym to find out? Just go to the gym as normal and mention it when you chat. Chen Yang advised, just be natural and chat casually. Chapter 38 Liu Yuan's WeChat ID. Fukin then remembered to post the message and sat in front of the computer, his fingers typing rapidly on the keyboard. I've registered a small account. He said, are you sure you want me to write that? Is there really no problem? Chen Yang walked behind Fukin and looked at the screen. It's okay, just write as I say. Remember to be gentle with your words and leave some room for ambiguity. Fukin nodded, though he was still a little confused. He started writing the post according to what Chen Yang said. Chen Yang returned to his bed, took out his phone, hesitated for a moment, and sent a message to Lin Xingyi. Did you eat on time? Almost instantly, Lin Xingyi replied. Yeah, how's your injury? Does it still hurt? Seeing this message, Chen Yang's mouth corners unconsciously raised. And he quickly replied, it doesn't hurt anymore, remember to take your medicine. Done, Fukin suddenly shouted. I have posted the post. Do you want to see it? Chen Yang got out of bed and read the post carefully. He nodded with satisfaction. Very good, that's it. Let's see how things develop next. Chen Yang has never been a weak person. Chu Sheng left him injured, so he couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I returned to my seat, sat on the chair under the bed, tapping the desktop with my fingers, pressing the computer's Win key again and again, watching the interface expand and shrink. His eyes were deep, and he was obviously thinking about something important. As if he had made up his mind, he picked up his phone and sent a message to Lin Xingyi. Xingyi, do you have seen your Luoyuan social account? Can you give me a push? After sending the message, Chen Yang felt a little nervous. Mainly because I'm afraid she'll have too many thoughts. Soon, Lin Xingyi replied, yes, but what do you want the senior sister's account for? Chen Yang had already thought of his excuse. I want to ask her something about Chu Sheng. Well, I'll send you the senior's account, but you have to be careful. That person is so annoying. When Chen Yang saw this message, his heart warmed. Don't worry, I just want to understand the situation. I won't cause any trouble, Chen Yang replied. After getting Yuan's account, Chen Yang immediately added her as a friend and attached a verification message. Friend Lin Xingyi, I have something to ask you. WeChat accounts are generally more private. It is not easy to be added unless you add it yourself or someone you know recommends it to you. While waiting for the other party to pass, he couldn't help but recall the day he saw Yuan sitting next to Lin Xingyi on the basketball court. She should be in the same class as Chu Sheng. I hope to get some information from her. Liu Yuan lived in a female dormitory called Ziachai Xingju at Linzhong University. But she was not in her own bed now. Hey Yu, can I sleep with you tonight? Liu Yuan said as she rubbed the owner of the bed. A girl who was about 1.5 meters tall had her head buried in Liu Yuan's chest. And she was having difficulty breathing. No, you'll make my bed dirty again. I promise I won't this time. While Yuan was arguing with Yu, the screen of her cell phone lit up. Dong Yang requests to add you as a friend. After reading the other party's remarks, Liu Yuan agreed without much thought. Seeing that his friend request was approved, Chen Yang edited a greeting message and got straight to the point. Hello, senior sister, my name is Chen Yang, a friend of Lin Xingyi. I want to ask you something. Yu, who was standing beside her, stopped trying to shoo Yuan off the bed and leaned forward curiously. Is this your new suitor? No, I have a girlfriend. Then why did I add you? You must be a scumbag, delete me now. Liu Yuan ignored the chattering little girl next to her and replied. I remember you ask. Yes, you have a good memory. Actually, I want to ask about Chu Sheng and learn more about his situation. Yu's head was lying on the bed next to Liu Yuan's. His hands still restless. Is this a new way to pick up girls? Another girl in the dormitory, Shangqiu and Nuo, saw that the two had become quiet and thought that Liu Yuan had made Qilingyu surrender. Normally, Liu Yuan would either sleep with Shangqiu and Nuo or Qilingyu. On the day when the Food Society was recruiting new members, she even asked Shangqiu and Nuo to do the hard labor. Sleeping together would be fine. But the main thing is that I have to be gently stroked, rubbed and picked by restless hands. The reason why Qilingyu was not pulled over was simply because the youth association was also very busy. Liu Yuan didn't seem surprised and replied, I know a little, but not much. What specific aspects do you want to know? Chen Yang thought for a moment. I mainly want to know about his study and performance in school. Is this Chen Yang Chu Sheng's father? Qilingyu interrupted again. Chu Sheng's grades are probably among the top few in the department. Liu Yuan replied. And he has participated in many competitions and won many awards. Chen Yang frowned and understood what was going on. This was pretty much what he thought. Thinking of this, Chen Yang thought about it and asked carefully, Senior, what do you think Chu Sheng will do in the future? For example, awards, guaranteed admission to graduate school, or selected students? Qilingyu looked at the chat records between the two, touching a piece of softness, and commented, this guy named Chen Yang is either Chu Sheng's father or a gay. Liu Yuan seemed to be stumped by this question, and replied after a while, you are quite perceptive indeed. I heard that Chu Sheng is interested in applying for the selection examination. Given his achievements and resume, he should have great hope. Chen Yang's eyes became profound, which was almost completely consistent with his guess. People like Chu Sheng will definitely choose a path that will lead to rapid promotion. This would be much easier if Chu Sheng had no desires or demands. Chen Yang really couldn't do anything to him. Thank you for telling me this, Senior. Chen Yang replied. By the way, Chu Sheng, do you have any special hobbies? Liu Yuan thought for a moment and replied, I'm not sure about that. After finishing the conversation with Liu Yuan, Chen Yang leaned back in his chair and began to organize the information he had obtained. Chu Sheng has excellent grades, rich resume, good performance in the student union, and is interested in applying for the selection of students. Although the college student union has no practical use, it is indeed a springboard to enhance your resume. Chu Sheng is obviously very clear about this, which is why he is so enthusiastic about the work of the student union. Another thing is that he likes to chat up pretty girls. Chen Yang felt that as long as he investigated a little deeper, he would definitely find something interesting. A new message popped up, interrupting Chen Yang's thoughts. By the way, classmate Chen Yang, I have an idea I want to discuss with you. Chen Yang raised his eyebrows and replied curiously. Please speak, Senior. What do you think about letting Lin Xingyi join the school student union? This question stunned Chen Yang's school student union. Chen Yang didn't have any objection. Lin Xingyi had already joined several clubs, and Chen Yang was worried that she would be too busy to handle it. Liu Yuan seemed to notice Chen Yang's hesitation and sent another message. Of course, this is just a suggestion. There are no mandatory activities in the Food Society and the school student union, so you don't have to participate if you don't have time. If Junior Lin Xingyi is interested, she can come for an interview next semester, which is when you are in your sophomore year. If you are interested, you can come too. After thinking it over again and again, Chen Yang decided not to give a clear answer for the time being. He replied, thank you for your advice, I will discuss it with her. Liu Yuan put down her phone and immediately returned to the main topic. Let's sleep together. Chapter 39. My civil servant father. The more Qilin thought about it, the more she shouldn't have agreed to let Liu Yuan play on her bed. Then she shook her head. No, my bed is too small for two people. Liu Yuan pouted, revealing an aggrieved expression. But we haven't slept together for a long time, almost a week. After saying this, he put his arms around her waist. No, can we sleep together? The little girl was hugged by Liu Yuan's waist, and she felt a soft pressure on her chest, feeling a little helpless. Yuan, stop making trouble. I'm busy at the youth association tomorrow. Liu Yuan looked at Qilingyu with big eyes, her eyes full of pleading. Just one night, please. The more Qilingyu looked at her best friend acting coquettously, her heart couldn't help but soften a little.